What is up? Hello, howdy, y'all. Thanks for taking a minute to just tune in. It has been a while since I've jumped on and talked to y'all and said hello. And certainly, this is the first time that I'm doing a training of this sort. But it came out of a tremendous amount of feedback from our group of about 15 to 20 plus, what I'm calling like our cohort, our beta testers. Um, we have a private Facebook group, and it is where I kind of dump all of my ideas, and it's across disciplines, across industries, from mentors of mine, of people who've worked with me in the past, or who've seen my work and thought it was cool. Um, and for me, that came out of all of the free content that I've posted, all of the ideas that I've been playing with, and this has just been an incredible journey to be on, to really think about, what does empathy mean? Is this a subjective thing for people? Um, and what is, the private and intimate interpretations of empathy? So what this is today is going to be 150% free framework that you can use, that is like our system, the system that I've developed um, when I started sort of unpacking empathy as a methodology that you could use to be more successful in your life. And when I say that to people, people get like weirded out by that, because it's not, I guess, the traditional sort of mindset and performance coaching that you get from all of your favorite gurus on the internet, right? It's not 1 + 1 = 2. Um, and the reason why I've chosen empathy as the path is because it actually is something that can have a real world impact. And it's something that can significantly change your life if it's something that you invest in changing. Like, you know, if you see yourself as a better listener, because you know that one of the challenges that you're facing is you're not really doing a good enough job in listening, receiving information, understanding information. If you're not, understanding how to like articulate back to people what they're saying to you, or you're getting upset, this is going to be awesome for you, because it's going to help you like really think about, something that's useful. And so the point of this, something that is useful that you can use going forward, and something that you can refer to, right? That's what a framework is. This is something that you can put in place, that you can like, write down, and you can look back at, and you can say, okay, I remember this, and this is a tool in my toolkit that I can use to help when you're in those tough moments, those moments when you're feeling not like your best self, your most empathetic self. And there's two practical applications for this. There's the talk that we have with ourselves, so self-talk, and then there's the talk that we have with others. And so a lot of the time, people recall information, and we add in these sort of unreliable kind of narrator details into a conversation, or we if you're like me, you'll constantly kind of be like, what, I should have said that. I didn't, I fucked up. I should have approached this in this way. And so this training, this framework, this system that I'm about to work you through, is we're going to go through it really fast, because one of the pieces of feedback that we got from the group was that it's actually more useful if I give you guys like, like kind of from the hose, right? Like in as little time as possible. So when we're launching our courses, and we're going to actually launch a course on the REFRAME system, which I'm about to teach you, that's a lot more expansive, right? It's not going to be, 15 minutes or whatever this ends up clocking out as. This is going to be, you know, more like 30 or 45, where we kind of go into the actual like steps and kind of how, if you don't have the capacity or the time, or it's too triggering for you to kind of get to one place, how you kind of work through that stuff, and each individual like kind of tool set that you can use for each individual letter. Because it's an acronym, right? Like reframe is, we're using the word, but we're also using it as an acronym so that you can remember each individual step. And I'm going to get into that in a second. But you know, empathy has saved my life a million times. It is the single most transformational thing outside of like learning transcendental meditation and, you know, going into digital marketing like as a, you know, career choice 20 years ago. Like empathy as a soft and hard skill has, you know, been as significant as those two things, if not more so, at making, you know, a world of difference in my life. And so that is why when I'm thinking about, you know, what problems are we solving at the empathetic leader? Well, you know, I already talked to you about active listening as an example, right? Empathy allows you to become a better listener. Um, but it also allows you to actually like put yourself in somebody else's shoes without judging them. And that's really fucking critical if you want to lead people, if you want people to trust you, and if you want people to believe in you, whether you're laying bricks or you're selling widgets. If people don't believe you and they don't trust you, you're not going to be very successful. You might be successful as hell, you might be charming, you might be good looking, you might know, you know, the ins and outs of every single aspect of your business. But at a certain point, the facade falls and the curtains get pulled back, and people see that you don't actually give a shit about anybody, and that's like end game. So empathy is a really huge tool. We are like, you know, if you use you look at any of our marketing materials, what we say is we put the path in empathy, and that is absolutely 150% true. So let's get into it. We're going to talk about the reframe system. I'm going to go really, really quickly. I'm going to list out what the steps are, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it, and then, you know, write this down. I'll go really, you know, as quickly as possible, but I think that if you listen to this and you apply it and you ask yourself with honesty and courage, is this true? Like when you're working through hard things, when you're working through hard things with yourself, or you're working through a hard thing with somebody else, these are going to be helpful tips and something that you can have in your back pocket that's useful. Okay, so the reframe system. R is for recall. So recall. E is for evaluate. F is for focus. R is for reconcile. A is for acceptance. M is for mend. And E is for empower. Recall, evaluate, focus, reconcile, acceptance, mend, elevate. So what does this mean? When we are assessing a situation, when you're hearing things, when you're getting information, when you're listening, or when you're working through something, you're trying to figure out how to react, the recall is critical. Recalling the information that you have about that moment, the data and the context clues you have about the people that you're with, the context clues that you have about yourself. You need a foundation to be empathetic. You can't just deploy it. So you're coming from a place where you need to assess what information you already have so you can make the foundation and lay down the foundation for everything else you're about to do. Because if you're not working with data, then the rest is, you're not going to have anything to work with, right? So like you need to recall everything, every piece of information you have about how you got into that place and what you can leverage to do everything else that comes after this. So an example, I am fighting or disagreeing with a coworker, and they are not happy that I'm disagreeing with them. And maybe there's a power dynamic at play. Maybe I have the leverage. Maybe I have the power. Maybe I'm telling them, I want you to do it this way. And maybe they're saying, I want to do it this way. We're going back and forth. And they know that I have the ability to push them to do it the way that I want them to do it. But I know that they want to do it because they want to prove to themselves and they want to prove to me that they're right and that they have the information and that they're good at their job and they're skilled and talented and they're worthy of trust and responsibility. So this is a conundrum. So I have to recall, what information do I have about this person? Have they let me down in the past? Are they sensitive to criticism? How successful have they been in the past? All of that data is going to help me inform how to react in that moment. So I have to have something to recall. And this is why empathy is a constant like snowball. You can't just deploy it and then throw it away because that's the best use case for it. What you actually have to be doing is trying to figure out, how do I expand empathy at all times? How do I expand my empathy? So I'm actually listening, 6 weeks ago when something was going wrong, because now I have that moment and those series of moments to help inform what I'm going to do now. So I have data to pull from, to recall from, to help me make a decision, right? That's important. We have E for evaluate. Now I'm going to evaluate what I already know. I'm going to evaluate what I know based on the information that I've recalled. And now I'm going to evaluate what I know in that moment. How am I feeling? And this is why, I'm telling you guys to meditate and to journal, because if you have no baseline of emotional and like intelligence and impulse control, like there's nothing for you to evaluate. Anytime you're in conflict or anytime you're in a disagreement, that's all that's going to be there, is just that fieriness and that like ferocity. That's not, you've got to figure out what's under the surface of all that stuff. So you're evaluating the information that you're recalling while this is happening in real time, right? These are real skills, right? You have to be present while you are running the fact check in your mind. And so you have to evaluate, like, is this person trustworthy? Is this person responsible? Is this true? Is what I know about them true? And that brings you to F, right? Because you have to focus. You also have to be focused in the moment of what is happening. You have to be focused on the conversation. You have to be focused on the shiftiness. You've got to get focused on like, how is my behavior impacting somebody else? So you have to be focused at all times when you are applying an empathetic rigor or an empathetic methodology. This is what you're trying to do. You're trying to figure out, okay, I've recalled some information, I'm evaluating, and I'm focused on what's happening. So I've got a collection of data. I've kind of sorted through what is real and what is not. And now I'm focused on what we do, what the interaction is, what the one-to-one is. When you have those first 3 steps down, you've got to reconcile the information. You've got to be able to sort of, as I said earlier, figure out what is true and what is not. And you've got to be able to do that. And like the important thing here is that you see the relationship between all these things. When you're reconciling the information, you have to be able to accept it. You can't reconcile the information and be like, nah, I don't accept it. John, he means well, but the last 6 weeks in a row, he's blown everything up. Well, John could mean well, but John could also be careless. And you can, the best thing you can do, right? Like this is one of the things that I talk about all the time in the free stuff. If you follow me on social media, you'll see that I say, you don't get to be absolved of the responsibility of leadership because you're being empathetic. If anything, you have an understanding now of like what it takes, and you believe in the people that you've put in the right place. And this is a completely different conversation. If you haven't put the right people in the right places, then that is your fault. You screwed up. You've fallen short. Your job as a leader is to put the best people in a position to succeed. And if you haven't done that, then that is completely separate than this system and a completely different conversation. And I've managed hundreds of people and done like a wide variety of different kinds of analysis on teams and managers. So like if that's something that you need help coaching through, reach out or, ping me on TikTok, leave a comment, and I'll do a video about it. Anyway, so you have to be able to accept what you find out if you're being honest, right? Because the other thing is the system doesn't work if you're not being honest. So you get all this information, you're taking a deep dive, you're focused on what you're collecting in real time. You're like actually like making sense of it. And then you've got to like trust yourself. You've got to trust yourself, and you've got to trust that your instincts are correct. And you've got to trust that you've done everything correctly up until that moment. And if you haven't done stuff that's correct, then the other piece of this becomes how quickly can you pivot? I think Taylor Welsh has said this, and it's a really like helpful way to think about right and wrong. And it's like, it's not that I make a mistake, it's how quickly can I recover when I do? Because we're all like, you get your multiple options, we'll always have options, and you choose one and maybe the outcome isn't as good or it's not the one you wanted. That's fine. What do you do now? And so you have to be able to accept the decisions that you make. That's a part of being a leader. And that's also a part of like being able to put yourself in other people's shoes, is like you have to accept who they are when you do that work. When it comes to acceptance, this is probably the hardest jump, going from acceptance to mending. Because at some point, when you accept, you also see. It's coming to terms with things. And that means you either have to like fix what's broken, fix what's been exposed, fix what's raw, fix what's exposed. And I'm using a specific example on like a one-to-one, but this is also internal. You're talking about fixing what's broken in the way that you see yourself because you have not forgiven yourself or invested the time and the energy on yourself to think about how you can do better. Right? Like, if you're trying to figure out how to be more empathetic, it's something that you either want to improve upon, or straight away it's something that you lack. And so if you lack it, there are things that we have to fix. And this is, if there's one thing that I would ask you to try and take away from this, and I didn't have this, prepared, but if there's one thing that I would ask you try to take away from this training, it's that even if you've had a very difficult life and you had the worst luck and you're like struggling really badly with giving empathy, there was a chance that somewhere along the way there was a small kindness or someone who extended themselves, someone who was of service to you, and someone and some way that someone cared for you or gave you advice, whether it was solicited or unsolicited, and they helped you on your path. If you're in a very limited company of people who have not encountered that person yet or that thing, perhaps this moment is it, right? Maybe you are showing up for yourself right now. But like the reality of this is that we have to figure out when we moved away from the state of like understanding that people are also going through things and understanding that people also have their own challenges and they have their own stories to tell, and that those things can be challenges that we have to work with as we try to figure out how to like live and exist together in harmony in the world. And you're trying to navigate that all the time. You don't get to just do it once. You constantly have to live in the state of navigating, right? Because you're meeting people and you're taking on new challenges and new responsibilities probably pretty often. So the mending portion is like, what do we have to fix in the communication? What do we have to fix in the way that we perceive this person? What do we have to fix in the way that we perceive ourselves? What is the block that is not allowing me to understand that there's a person in there and not see this person as like a machine or a subhuman? So that mending is the sort of like action, like the real sort of therapeutic action step that the deep self work, the deep work that people need to do to really evaluate how we got here. And, in the larger course, we kind of talk about like, how do you actually mend it? What are some exercises you can do? What are some tools that you can put in place to help with that? And then, so we talk about E, which is elevating. It's about the elevating the standard, elevating the conversation, elevating the expectation of the person and of yourself, like elevating the responsibility. You know, it's your job as the leader, whether in name only or in title or imagined or, self-imposed, whatever the case may be, it is your job to constantly elevate the situation. So this framework, recall, evaluate, focus, reconcile, acceptance, mend, elevate. These are the steps that you would take to kind of refer back to think about when you're in these sort of circumstances and you're trying to figure out like what is something I can keep handy to help me kind of make sense of situations that I'm going through. It's going to take some time before you like recall it and have it in your back pocket and are ready to deploy it. But I'd encourage you to like, you know, take a sheet of paper, write each letter out, underline it, leave a couple of lines, and like just write, 2 to 4 bullet points about something that has happened, a conversation that shook you, something, that a conversation with yourself or a situation with yourself that you're working through that you would like to apply more empathy or, perceive it differently. This is one of the ways that you can do that. Quickest way to know if you're having an impact is to ask. So like if you got something useful out of this, you can email us, support@theempatheticleader.com. And let us know how you feel. If this is a value to you, please share it. And if you like want to go deeper in this stuff, uh, please don't hesitate to grab the Reframe system course when it comes out. Um, and if you want to learn more about like different kinds of systems and IPs that we're building to help, this is just one of those and one of the applications to it. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for spending this much time with me on this system. I think it's awesome that you did this for yourself, and that you're thinking about empathy as a path to better self. That's the way that I think about it, and that's the way that I've thought about it. And so I'm very, very excited for the future of all of the empathetic leaders that are on this journey with me. So thanks so much for just making time, and I hope to hear from you soon, and see you on the flip side.